I don't think people understand just how much a simple tent peg could decide life or death in World War II. Before we dive in, hit subscribe, like and share, because what you're about to learn could change the way you camp forever. During World War II, soldiers faced not just enemy fire, but the relentless power of nature. In North Africa, Europe and the Eastern Front, a simple canvas tent was often their only refuge. But when fierce winds struck, these shelters could collapse in seconds, leaving men and equipment exposed. Imagine exhausted troops finally set up camp, only for a midnight gale to rip their tents apart, soaking maps, radios and medical supplies. A failed tent meant lost sleep, ruined gear and shattered morale, sometimes with deadly consequences. The humble tent peg, it turned out, was as vital as any weapon. Its failure could compromise entire operations. This constant struggle forced rapid innovation. Old camping tricks weren't enough for the brutal, unpredictable weather of global war. Soldiers and engineers had to rethink everything, how to pitch, anchor and secure their shelters. They needed a system that was strong, simple, and could be set up in the dark, under fire, with frozen hands. The solution they found was a masterclass in using physics to turn the wind's power against itself. It changed the way armies camped and survived. The problem? Most soldiers drove tent pegs straight down, like nails. This worked in calm weather, but in a storm the wind didn't just push, it lifted. The curved tent acted like a wing, pulling pegs upward. A vertical peg had little resistance to this force, especially in wet or sandy ground. Gusts would work the peg loose, and soon the whole tent would collapse. Each guy rope relied on a single peg, so one failure could bring down an entire side. The load wasn't shared, it was concentrated, making the system brittle. The issue wasn't weak materials, but poor geometry. Soldiers were fighting the wind head-on, using a method that was doomed to fail. To survive, they needed to anchor their tents, not just nail them down. The answer required a new angle, literally. By rethinking how force travelled through the pegs and ropes, they could finally outsmart the wind. This shift in perspective would change everything. The breakthrough? Drive pegs in at a 45-degree angle, pointing away from the tent. At first it seemed odd, but it worked. Now, when the wind pulled on the guy rope, it drove the peg deeper, not out. The wind's force became an ally, not an enemy. Next, soldiers used multiple pegs for each guy rope, forming a V or even an inline series. This distributed the load, doubling or tripling holding power. If one peg started to move, the others took over. The tent became a flexible, resilient structure, stronger under pressure. No single peg or patch of ground could fail alone. The angled pegs and shared load paths turned fragile shelters into fortresses. Even hurricane-force winds couldn't tear them down. This simple change in technique was a quiet revolution. With just rope, wood, and a new understanding of physics, soldiers could finally sleep through the storm. The method spread quickly, saving lives and equipment across every front. The new method wasn't just about angles, it was about reading the land. In firm soil, a standard peg at 45 degrees held fast. But in sand or mud, soldiers needed longer pegs, sometimes fashioned from branches, to reach stable ground. When pegs failed entirely, they improvised with the dead man anchor, burying a log, rock or sandbag as a massive underground anchor. The wind now had to pull a heavy object through packed earth, a nearly impossible task. Success depended on observation and adaptation. Soldiers learned to test the soil, choose the right anchor, and adjust their technique for every environment. This practical fieldcraft was as crucial as any weapon. Survival depended on it. Anchors alone weren't enough. The ropes had to stay taut. Enter the taut line hitch, a simple adjustable knot. It let soldiers tighten or loosen guy ropes instantly, even in the dark, with frozen hands. This kept tents drum-tight, reducing flapping and shock loads. The knot's adjustability let each rope share the load, keeping the whole structure balanced. No special tools, just skill and practice. The taut line hitch became the vital link between anchor and shelter, making survival possible in the worst storms. The new anchoring system was tested in the harshest conditions: Italy's mountains, England's coasts, and the chaos of D-Day. In Italy, the 10th Mountain Division's tents stood firm in hurricane winds while others collapsed. In England, vast tent cities survived Atlantic gales protecting troops before the Normandy invasion. These weren't just stories of comfort, they were about survival. A secure tent meant warmth, rest, and readiness for battle. The method spread from veteran to recruit, not from manuals, but as life-saving craft. The proof was in the shelters that stood and the lives that were saved. A few angled pegs and a well-tied knot made all the difference. These wartime lessons matter just as much today. Modern tents are lighter, but the wind is just as fierce. Flimsy pegs and poor anchoring still lead to disaster. By using robust pegs, driving them at 45 degrees and distributing the load, any camper can secure their shelter. Deadman anchors and the taut line hitch remain essential skills. Many tents have extra guy-out points. Use them all. Mastering these old techniques turns you from a gear buyer into a true outdoors expert. The wisdom of the past keeps you safe, no matter the storm. In a world obsessed with new gear, the old ways endure for a reason. Weapon soldiers had only canvas, rope and wood, but their solutions were simple, robust and field repairable. These skills connect us to generations of survivors and explorers. Driving a stake at the right angle, tying a taut line hitch, these are timeless acts of self-reliance. The real lesson is mindset. Observe, adapt, and use nature's power to your advantage. True security comes not from equipment, but from knowledge and skill. Whether facing a storm in the wild or in life, resilience is built on simple, proven principles. The wisdom of the past is your best tool for the future.